Hey, what's up, guys? First, I have a little bit of good news for you. I know we were a little bit behind on getting some of the PDFs up on the Patreon site. I don't know if you've been checking that, but for the Patreon subscribers, every time we do an episode where Brian does a painting and things, we put it up on the Patreon page. We put like the D&D stats and the things that I wrote for it, and then we put the pictures that Brian created. And been a little bit behind on that with the wedding and the honeymoon and all that stuff, but the good news is I think we're pretty much up to date. Garden of Terror should come out later this week, but everything else is available on the Patreon now, patreon.com/Dungeon Mastery, and you should be able to find everything there. Hopefully it's working correctly, and if it's not, just send us a message and let us know. And then we've got a new episode coming out this Thursday. I'm going to try to start getting them out on Thursdays instead of Fridays, and we'll have the PDF hopefully coming out concurrently with that episode. And then moving forward, that's going to be the goal. We just kind of are figuring things out, so we were a little bit behind, and apologize for that. But hopefully we're back on track now. So today I wanted to do something a little bit different. I've been doing these little videos where I talk to the camera and I just kind of give you little tips on, Dungeons and Dragons stuff for DMs kind of things. And I want to do something a little bit different for the next few sessions of this. And I guess what I'm doing now is I'm actually in the process of creating a new D&D campaign for my friends and my weekly group that I do. And instead of kind of trying to think of whatever pops into my head that I can talk about each week, I kind of want to just start at the beginning and kind of walk you through the way that I'm going to run this campaign, the way I'm working on it, some of the stuff that is that's going on in my head. I've been doing this for 20 something years, and I'm kind of crazy, so I go off the deep end with this kind of stuff, as you've probably seen from the PDFs that you're downloading and the other episodes you've seen of the show. So I get a little nutty, and I kind of just going to share with you how I do it, because I can give you little shortcuts and tips and tricks, and if I can think of things along the way, I'll do that. But I'm nuts, and I'm just going to give you the nuts version of it, at least while I'm running this campaign. And I'd be interested to hear you guys' comments on some of these things. I'd be interested to hear what you think. I do eventually intend to kind of turn this campaign setting and this adventure that I'm going to work on into a fantasy novel at some point, which I think could be a really fun thing to do, and I'm looking forward to it. So any feedback you guys have would be pretty helpful for me, not only running the campaign, but also in the future as I try to turn this into a novel. Another thing that I'll mention is that I think maybe some of the people that are in my group watch this, so I'm not going to get into anything that I haven't done yet. Hopefully it'll just be a step-by-step of like what I worked on, and then once I get into actually running the campaign, how it went and what happened on each session, and kind of challenges that arose for me while I'm still thinking about them, weird DM things that come up that you have to make weird rulings on, and things will pop up into my head along the way, and we'll just kind of go from there. So to start, I wanted to send out, the first thing I did, I've been working on this campaign setting, been thinking about this adventure, thinking about this idea for, I don't know, over a year now. We have maybe 2 or 3 guys that DM our D&D group, and I had run a really big campaign that had gone for multiple months. We play like every Tuesday night or every Wednesday night, depending on the week. And so I had run an adventure for, I'd say, like maybe a year, 8 months to a year, somewhere in there. And then my brother took over for another year, and we've been doing, one of our other friends took over for a little bit after that. And I've been kind of kicking around an idea in my head for an adventure that's set in an empire that's run by the Elves, right? So it's something you don't see very much usually when you're running a D&D setting, and in this world that we've created, it's almost always human style, always human towns, that kind of thing. And I wanted to kind of run an adventure that was set in more of an elf town. And so I'm calling the city where we begin the adventure, I'm calling it Dawnwing, the City of Mages. And it's this very cool city that I'm going to kind of get into more when I talk about building the actual city. But we're going to plan on starting the campaign in maybe 2 or 3 weeks. And so to kind of get people thinking about their characters, I like to send out an email ahead of time kind of telling everybody, here's what the deal is, here's the campaign setting, here's the adventure, here's how we're going to start thinking about your guys, because when we all get together and roll our characters up, you'll have an idea of what you want, so you're not just sitting there. Because there's nothing worse than when you all get together to work on a new campaign and everybody's rolling their characters up, and then you've got 2 copies of the Pathfinder book, and you've got a couple guys just flipping through every single feat trying to figure out what they want. It's much better if you can kind of get people thinking about their character and their setting ahead of time, and then there's times where I've played adventures like this where I don't really know what the setting is. I make my guy because I'm like, well, I've been kind of wanting to make this kind of character. So you make him, and then you sit down, and the guy's like, all right, we're in the Elf Empire, and here's your background. And you're like, oh, man. Well, now I have like a cool idea based on the thing you just gave me, but I've also got this dude that I've already planned out every feat that he's going to take from now until he's 15th level. So I'm kind of stuck trying to decide what I'm going to do, right? You don't want to be creating the lore for your character, especially if you're nuts like me. You don't want to be creating the lore for your character while you're sitting there rolling the dice trying to figure your stuff out. I like to be prepared, and I think, I'm sure some people enjoy that, but it's not really for me. I'm a little too type A for that. Okay, so here's what I did. I just sent out was going to be a small email. It ended up being a big email because I'm not good at not writing a ton of things every time I try to do anything. So gave a little bit of a setup. They're going to start as level 1 characters. They're in Dawnwing, the city of mages. It's on the northern coast of the Elven Empire. Very big city. The Empire is mostly elves. There's some half-elves. There's, maybe an odd human or 2. But this Empire is almost entirely elven, high elven. And then on the northern coast, they have a couple of cities that are trading ports, and this is one of them. And this one has a pretty decent mix of different types of characters, right? So there's humans, there's dwarves, that kind of thing. And so I send them an email, and it's like, all right, this is the setting. You're in the Elven Metropolis on the Bay of Whispers in the Elven Empire, the Taolin Empire, I called it. And you're all part of a private mercenary company called the Iron Assembly. And you've all been, you're level 1, so you're new guys. You signed up for this mercenary company in the Elven Empire, and you were assigned to as security detail for Lord Kieran Emberwood. He's a very wealthy jewel dealer in the city. And it's him and his wife and their 10-year-old son, and they have this giant villa on the coast. He makes a lot of money, he makes a lot of magic items, and you're assigned to be a bodyguard, security detail. That's all I give the players for them when they're starting. Right, kind of gives you an idea, so they can kind of start planning what they want to do, right? Then I give another paragraph about the setting, right? Here's the Empire, 90% Elven. 60% of these elves are high elves. That's like the more Legolas kind of, Lord of the Rings style elf. And then they live kind of on the coasts and in the mountains. And then there's the forest area in there, and that's populated by the wood elves. They're a little bit more rough and tumble, right? They're a little more, they live out in the woods, they hunt, they scavenge, they do that kind of stuff. So the high elves, we're looking at wizards and fighters. The wood elves, we're looking at druids and rangers, right? Rough kind of deal. And then, so I kind of set up a little bit of a background here where the wood elves and the high elves, they don't really get along. I want to kind of come up with some nicknames they can call each other to make fun of each other. But, the high elves think that the wood elves are a bunch of illiterate hillbillies, and the wood elves think that the high elves are super prissy. And, they get along fine. This empire has been around for thousands of years because you have these elven lifespans where they've all been together forever. So when you live 300 years, you're not really willing to you're less likely to get into a war at when you're 40 years old and die and lose out on the next 240 years of your life. Okay. So the wood elves and the high elves, they've fought in the past, but they've been at peace for thousands of years, and they have this mutual government now. And for people who are from outside of here, right, the characters, they can be any race that they want that's allowed in the book. But if you're going to be outside of, so humans, dwarves, halflings, elves, half-elves, those are okay, right? When you get into the real weird ones, the half-orcs, the half-giants, the tieflings and stuff that's weird for the high elves, and they don't like it, right? They don't really have a lot of trust for these outsiders. They'd fought wars with dwarves in the past, so they're a little sketchy about dwarves. They really hate the half-orcs, and they will attack you on sight if you're a dark elf, right? They're forbidden. Dark elves are forbidden in this kingdom. So you can't be that, or if you can, you have to be if you're going to be that, you have to be real clever about how you disguise yourself. Better put a couple points in that. So even as one of the things I wanted to say that was that, like, because we've been playing this campaign setting for a long time, and there is the main continent where all of the stuff has been going on. And like I said, I've had this D&D group for like 10 years, right? So we all know kind of what's going on right here. And the Elven Empire is kind of on the northern coast. It's an island off to the north, right? So I was saying that, like, even for elves, the traditional elves, they're going to be a little bit outsiders in this empire, right? Because they're a very insulated society, and once you leave, if you're born off the outside of the empire, you're kind of an outsider. So I have some rules for that I'll get into in a minute. Also, one of the things that I wanted to include was to make this be a setting where you would feel like you were an outsider, right? So the language here is Elven, right? It's not Common. So people start speaking Common, but that's not the language of this region, right? If you want to communicate with these people, they can mostly speak Common, but they don't like it. I think of it like Paris, right? Where like a lot of them speak English, but they don't want to because they shouldn't have to because they're in their capital, and they had an empire that like spanned a large portion of the world. They're not going to speak English to you. They're going to speak French to you, right? That's the elves. If you could try to speak Common to them, they'll make it understood. Like you could be understood. They'll talk to you back, but like they'll immediately dislike you. They'll immediately like you less than they would have if you spoke to them in Elven. So take a linguistics point or get an intelligence bonus. You're gonna have to speak Elven if you want to communicate with these people, especially if you're going to be the talker of the party. The other thing is that they have their own religion, right? I called it the Cadeia, which is Portuguese for the chain, and it's an interesting. The way I've kind of formulated this is that the government, the Mage Guild, and the religion are all the single entity, right? With the Emperor as its figurehead, and they have a council that kind of makes all the rules and stuff. But going against the religion is also treason and heresy, right? So they're all kind of a similar. I want to make this kind of a weird, like, Big Brother-y kind of deal, where the government, the religion, and the Mages Guild are all a single ladder, and if you're not part of this religion, right, and it's a religion that's just for this empire. If you're not part of this religion, you are not welcome to accept like higher level mage services from these people, right? So if you are operating in this campaign setting for the purposes of Dawnwing, this campaign I'm running, if you are killed or you lose an arm or something, it's not like it's going to be expensive to be resurrected or have your arm reattached or regenerated or have negative levels removed from you. It is impossible if you are not a member of this faith, and this faith is only available to people who are from this area. I guess you could convert, but that's going to be a whole thing that we're going to have to do in the adventure for you to convert to this religion if you don't take it from the beginning. Anyway, I wanted to, and then I created a little class. I mean, it's not a class. It's just like in the Pathfinder book, they tell you how to kind of set up a religion, and it's not that hard. It's like, okay, here's your alignments, here's your domain ideas, and then I had them be basically like the domain for it is the domains are going to be. I have it written down here. Sorry. So for the religion, I wanted to do something a little bit different with it. The weapon is a quarterstaff, the animal is a falcon, the alignments are lawfully neutrally, lawful good, lawful neutral, neutral good, or true neutral. The religion is dedicated to the pursuit of logic, reason, and arcane power to help further understand the mysteries of the planes, the gods, and the natural world. Okay, this is like a sciencey kind of magic religion, right? Almost a worship of magic, because these guys, these are elves, and they've had this empire forever, and they've met gods, right? And they've seen, this is a weird thing with D&D where they've met the gods before, and they've had fights with them sometimes. So these guys it's a religion, but it's a very magical focused one, a very arcane focused one. And one thing that I wanted to do with this, so for the domains, I put artifice, knowledge, magic alchemy, and magic arcane as your possible domains if you wanted to take this religion as a priest, or even if you wanted to be a druid. I called druid, like, it's fine if you want to be a druid, and you can still be part of this Cadeia religion. And I had it kind of be like what the Romans did with the pagans, where the Druids, it's technically considered a priest of the Cadeia religion. However, it's kind of a mash between the traditional Wood Elf religion that they had before they were assimilated into the Empire and the main imperial religion. Kind of like how we do Christmas trees for the birth of Jesus, right? Like, Christmas tree, that's a Yule thing. that's like a pagan thing. I'm like, all right, well, you can have that, and like, but it's our religion now too. So that's what a druid is to the Kadea here. And one thing I did that I don't know how people will react to this, but one thing I allowed the player to do would be at character creation to take the prestige class of the Mystic Theurge, right? It's typically reserved for players. It's a prestige class. You're not supposed to be able to take it until you're level 7, and then you kind of progress up the cleric and wizard spell progressions simultaneously. You get the spells a little slower, you don't get the domain powers, you don't get the bonus spells, you don't get channeling or familiars or school specialization or domains or any of these other things. If you wanted to take it, you can pick it at character creation, and if you don't pick it at character creation, you can't take Mystic Theurge until you're 7th level and you have all the prerequisites and all that stuff. I'm not quite sure if that's going to work or not. I don't know if anybody's going to try it, so I might not have to test it, but like, I kind of think that that's an interesting take on the class, where you're getting priest and wizard spells. The way that the class works mostly is that you get the same number of spells per day as a wizard, but you can basically just pick between like the wizard and the priest. It's kind of an interesting idea, and it works well with the setting that I kind of had in mind for this. So we'll see how that goes. But anyway, if you're not a member of this religion, you're not going to get healed. So it's going to make death a little bit more scary than it can traditionally be in certain settings if you're really good about letting players resurrect themselves or come back from the dead or whatever, regrow an arm, whatever. That's not going to happen here. I want people to be afraid of dying because they're not coming back, or it's going to be a whole process to try to bring you back. And then I came up with some alternate race rules for the different types of elves and humans and things. So in the setting of this empire, we have like the Middle Eastern, the ancient Egypt kind of land, right? And what happened in one of the previous parts of our adventures, and I'll build this into the backstory, is kind of like you had the ancient Egypt part, but some horrible evil came out of there, right? Some giant monster came out from under a pyramid and like wreaked havoc on the world. And after that thing was killed, the Elven Empire went down there and they captured that town. They captured the capital of we call it Coptia, but it's like the ancient Egypt land. And they captured that, and they were like, we have to lock this down because whatever evil magic came from here threatened the entire world. It's for your own protection, but like we're bringing in soldiers, and it basically becomes a crusader state, right? I'm kind of basing it off of the crusader states in the Middle East, and these guys are in there. People that are there don't want them there. These guys don't really want to be there that much. And what's ended up happening is we've set that was maybe in the game, in terms of gameplay, maybe 100 years earlier, right? And over that 100 years, what happened is the same thing that happened in the Crusader states, where a lot of these guys from this region have started to go native, right? They've kind of started to adopt some of the similar cultures, and even though they are imperial-born high elves, when they come back to visit and stuff, they're different enough that they seem very alien to the people that have never left the Empire. So one of the things I like to do to kind of give the different countries in my world a little bit of different flavor is I set up alternate racial rules for the different regions, right? So if you want to be an elf from the main continent where all the regular people are, it's just an elf from the book, fine. If you want to be an elf from this region, I set out some alternate racial rules for it, right? You don't get keen senses, elven magic, and weapon familiarity. You get a +2 to your diplomacy and sense motive checks when you're in social situations with other people, and you get spell focus as a bonus feat, right? So I just went through in the Pathfinder book and looked at the alternate racial rules, and I took out the ones that I just picked a couple out of there, right? They've already got it built in. If you take this one, you have to remove these ones. Pretty easy. I just basically went with a town elf or an urban elf template. But for the purposes of this game, that means you are a royal elf. You are from the Empire. You are, pure blood elf that, it's going to affect the way that people deal with you in this city and in this empire. And it's also going to kind of give you a little bit of a different spin and make what country you're from feel different, right? If you want to be a wood elf from the interior of this land, it's a whole different thing. You get a +1 to hit dwarves and orcs, and you get a +2 to your initiative, right? Of different types of skills kind of is going to make a wood elf play a little bit different from a high elf. It's a different enough change that it's going to make sense, and it's going to give a different feel to it, but it's not a huge enough change that you're going to get people that are going to just crazy min-max their guys based off of the racial traits, right? And so going back to this Coptia thing, I've got a Coptic Elf. They're a little bit different, right? They have a +1 to hit. They get a exotic weapon proficiency with one of the Egyptian style weapons that we have, a scimitar, falchion, or khopesh, and they get a +1 to hit with it. And these guys, because as like a gameplay thing, because they've kind of interspersed with like the culture in this town in Coptia, I'm going to have the players that want to be an elf from that region roll their characters up as half elves. And use all the stats and abilities and things for a half elf, because you've kind of become humanized a little bit, and but for the purposes of the game, you're an elf. You're skinned as an elf, but you run as a half elf, right? Mechanically, your guy is a half elf, but for game purposes, you look and are treated, as an elf. Human bane weapons don't work against you. Very very slight modification, but that's kind of my way of saying this guy's been kind of gone native with the humans in this realm. And then, I have a couple minor different ones for the humans. I have a human from that Coptia region. He's a little bit different. He's a little bit more urban because it's a big city. And then they're kind of near like the Viking area in the game. And so I have rules for like the Northmen, right? They get a cold resistance, and, they get an advantage to any kind of CMB, acrobatics, climb stuff that takes place in a cold or icy region. I trade that for their... I traded it for the skilled ability, where you get the extra skill point per level as a human. And then they get the Coptic Elves and the Northmen, they get their native languages as a free language when they start. And I like to have the languages be a little bit different, right? Then the Viking people, they speak a different language than common. They speak their own thing. The people from the ancient Egypt land, they speak their own language. It's different. Okay, so I typed a lot of this up, and kind of, it's a lot more concise the way I wrote it down on the thing. It's just kind of bullet points, like, here's the setting, here's this new religion, here's if you want to be a priest of it, here's like 3 options for racial abilities if you want to take like something different. And then I got people thinking, and I was like, one other thing I want the player to decide is I like to give little bonuses at character creation. This is a thing that kind of helps players flesh out their guy a little bit more, think a lot about him, kind of, give them a little bit of a more flavor to their characters so that they can get into role-playing him a little bit faster. And so I gave the players 3 options. And one of 3 things you can do when you create your guy. You can take a trait and a flaw, right? You tell me about your guy, I'll pick a trait out of the book, I'll pick a flaw out of the book. Silly little things, right? Where you get a +1 to hit this kind of thing, but the basic example is you take, you're from a cold region, so you get DR1 against ice, but you take an extra point of damage from fire. Right? Well, something along those lines. You tell me about your guy, I'll pick one thing you're good at, you get a +1 to that, and one thing you're bad at, you get a -1 to that. If it's a skill, it's a +2 and a -2, right? Easy stuff, doesn't really affect the gameplay that much, but gives the player a little bit something to think about where, my guys, not only can my guy, depending on how powerful the feat is, or the trait is, that's how powerful the flaw has to be. But like, I had a character that not only was afraid of water because his swim was low because he wore this heavy armor, but he literally could not swim, right? So that was the flaw that I took for that guy. I was like, I can't swim. I will drown if I fall into the ocean. I will drown, right? That's a pretty powerful flaw. I don't even think I took a trait. I just liked role-playing the idea of that because I was this giant minotaur that wore heavy armor, so like it doesn't make sense that thing would be able to swim. Anyway, stuff like that can kind of be interesting if the people can get really into role-playing it. Second option is give you a free skill point in a profession, a craft, or a perform, right? Those are 3 skills that can be very different things, right? You can craft alchemy, or you can craft armor, or you can make bows, or you can knit, right? Like, when craft is anything. Perform, where you want to play the flute, you want to dance, you want to be a good singer. Profession can be anything, right? A sailor, a merchant, where you worked as a bartender, right? You were a soldier for a while. Being a mercenary could be a profession, right? Anything you can think of, just give a point. And here's something that your guy's good at. He's really good at whittling stuff out of wood, right? Or he used to work washing dishes in a restaurant. That stuff can come up later, and they can roll skills for it. It's a thing that when you make a guy, you never put points in it. Unless you're a bard or like a wizard that creates magic items, you're never going to put points in any of this stuff. So like, I'll give you a free skill point in it, but you have to tell me what your guy's good at or what he did in the past, or and it's fun because stuff like that will come up in the game and be like, oh shoot, well, I didn't think it was actually going to be that useful that like, I used to wait tables, but this is a thing that my guy might know. You have a better chance of getting information out of the barmaid or whatever, and so that could be kind of a fun thing, right? So you can take a trait and a flaw, you can get a free skill point in either profession, craft, or perform. And the third is you can know a guy in the city of Dawnwing. You get a contact. He's level 1 to 3. He's, not a very high level guy. He's a clerk in the government office. He's a waiter. He's a shopkeeper's assistant. He's an apprentice blacksmith. There's somebody who's kind of on the same level as the characters are, which are 1 to 3, right? And he's friendly. You can kind of talk to him to get a little bit of information, right? I did the local knowledge skill. I'm using it a little bit differently than I usually use it, which is, this is kind of just to gather information, right? The characters aren't from this region, so knowledge local isn't going to be like, oh, well, that reminds me, I remember that this guy is actually the baron of this realm. No, you're not going to get that with local knowledge. You are going to gather information, right? I can talk to people. Local knowledge is like, you can kind of talk around to people and figure out what you need to, what you're looking for, asking around and finding out more about something. And if you, at character creation, put a point into local knowledge, you will get a contact, right? And it's easy for me, right? I don't know what these contacts are going to be at the beginning. It's going to matter. It's going to depend on the character, right? But this will be a guy that will be close to the character. So if they put a point in local knowledge, or they pick this as their bonus when they create their character, they're going to have a guy in town that knows a little bit of stuff, right? They can ask him, and I want him to be somebody that ends up being useful during the adventure for a while, right? Because it's the same as a skill point. So this guy's got to be as useful as a skill point. And he'll have information, any kind of local stuff that somebody from the town would know. You can go to this character and they will know it. Or they can put you in touch with somebody who could figure it out, right? They can kind of give you leads on the next part of the adventure. The other upshot to this is that at some point after you've helped them out 3 or 4 times with this NPC, you can use this NPC to make the party nervous, right? You can capture the NPC. You can have people threaten him. You can have bad things happen to this poor guy. And because he's helped out the party so much in the past, it's an easy way to kind of yank the party into a dungeon or an adventure or an encounter that they might have passed ahead of time. Oh, now this is how bad the big bad guy is. He just captured your friend and now he's tied up and you've got to come rescue him from this warehouse, So I haven't given too much thought to what that's going to be yet, but having a contact is something cool because it gives you as the dungeon master a little bit of leverage over the guys that you're playing against, over your players. So you always want to take stuff like that because it's very, very difficult to manipulate players to do what you want. And this is a very easy, very cheap way of being like, oh yeah, you remember your buddy? He's captured now. They do it in movies all the time, right? He's captured now. You got to go rescue him. Or like, you got to do this or we'll kill your friend and his whole family. Whatever, excellent evil machination fodder. So anyway, that's kind of where I'm setting up with this. And then people are going to make their characters and roll them up, and we're going to go from there. Hope this was useful to you, and I'm just going to kind of take you along on this adventure with me while I'm doing it, and give you some tips along the way of what things that might help you, or little pieces of information that might help you with your campaigns. If you have any questions about any of this stuff, or you have questions about your own campaign, or you want to give me some advice or tell me I suck or whatever, just put it down in the comments, and I'll read it and I'll respond to you, and we'll go from there. All right, thanks guys, and we'll see you on Thursday with a new video. Thanks.